Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to One-on-One Gupshup Session 16, hosted by Isola Gujarat and Isola Rajasthan chapter. I am Himanshu Taneja, and I would be hosting today's session. So today we have architect Pitanshi Singh from Bangalore and Mr. Mahendra Singh Shekhawat. He's our donor from Sun Irrigation. So before going ahead for the presentation and the presentation by the donor, I would request everyone to mute your audios and turn off your videos for better clarity. And there is going to be a question and answer session after all the presentations. And you can write your question and answers in question and answer in the chat box whenever it is asked for after the presentation. So about Sun Irrigation, Sun Irrigation is a renowned and well-reputed irrigation consultancy and executing firm, established in this field for more than 2.5 decades. So today, Sun Irrigation will be presenting a brief presentation about the importance of proper designing of irrigation system in landscape. So give me a minute, I will play the presentation. So, Ankur, can you please tell if the audio is audible or the video is audible?
No. Can you try again, please?
Yeah. Is it visible?
I guess you have to present again.
Okay.
I can see the presentation, but sound is not there.
Now was the audio there? Okay, let me try another. I think there's some problem.
Hello everyone and warm greetings from Sun Irrigation. Properly designing the irrigation system is a very important part of the irrigation system. To provide optimum, frequent and uniform supply of water to each plant, we put right products at right place. While designing an irrigation system, first we consider the habitat and species of plants and their water requirement. Like we can't give an equal quantity of water to xerophytes in palm. Then we plan what sort of irrigation product is required. Accordingly, we calculate total requirement of water. We then check the available quantity of water. Accordingly, we plan how the entire area should be managed to irrigate uniformly as per requirement. As per total water flow in different sections, we check total permissible length and diameter of pipes to be used for mainline, sub-mainline, and drip lines. After calculating total discharge and total head required operating irrigation system, we select pump. All elevation and slope of land must be considered to maintain pressure.
Okay, so I would request Mr. Mahendra to on your video for a few seconds. Yeah, thank you, Mahendra ji. You are welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
So, so today's presentation is Um, I will again introduce Pitanshi. Pitanshi, she's from Bangalore and she would be presenting her topic, the process in continuum. So the Pritanshi, along with Shantesh, is a partner at Reading Grounds. It is one of the young and explorative practice in the field of landscape design and ecological planning in Bangalore. They started their practice in 2014, and the practice engages in multitude of projects from private residences to ecological guidelines for government and large scale public projects. So what is at core though is to look at the practice as a ground to explore and to learn. Pritanshi brings her keen aesthetic skills, eye for the detail and design sensitivity into the practice. So reading grounds believe in an ongoing process for continuous evaluation. So the process in continuum is a presentation about the same. So Pritanshi, now I would request you to share your slide and start your presentation. Best of luck.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I thank Isola Gujarat and Rajasthan chapter for bringing me to this platform where I have an opportunity to share what we do as part of Reading Grounds. And thank you, all of you who are here on a Saturday evening. Himanshu, thank you for hosting this session. I would present now. Can someone confirm if the screen is visible?
No, not right now.
Not right now? Okay, 1 second.
You need to. In present now, you have to share your entire screen.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, it is presenting now. Yes.
I think it's working now.
Yes, we can
Okay.
see now.
Okay. So 6 years ago, when Shantesh and I had set up Reading Grounds in Bangalore, a practice in landscape design and ecological planning, both of us were firmly adamant on the fact that research, academia, and practice go hand in hand. And this ideology meant that we needed a more formal setup for our findings and research that we can bring back to Reading Grounds. And this led to the formation of ground research. Ground research is purely a space that allows us to explore, collaborate, and look at the practice with a deeper sense and beyond the realm of conventional understanding of landscape. In this way, basically both of them mirror each other, and ideas of ground research feeds into Reading Grounds and vice versa. This ideology also guides us in a way to focus on design as a process over a product, or a narrative over a style, intent over content. And in the similar fashion, ground research also encourages us to challenge and scrutinize our workings within the Reading Ground setup. Now, as to what we do within these two practices, on the left-hand side, it's reading grounds. So we primarily engage ourselves into the landscape design and ecological planning projects. The projects vary from small to large scale, and if you visit the website, that's how the projects are segregated as well. On the one side of the spectrum, we have more design-based, smaller sized projects where design becomes crucial. And as we start to move on the other side of the spectrum, we start to look at more strategy-based design on a larger scale. We also like to constantly keep ourselves engaged in public projects, working with government agencies or even planning bodies. While on the right-hand side, we have ground research, which is purely where we unwind. So apart from the active researches which feed back into reading ground, we have other platforms which are constantly looking at ways to collaborate and engage ourselves collectively to participate in a learning process. To begin with, we have Atelier, which is a travel workshop. And in the past few years, we have traveled as a group to multiple places with a like-minded set of people of varying age, diverse geographies, not necessarily only from architectural background, but allied fields. But all of them had a very similar intention, that they knew that they wanted to see, observe, and bring back those learnings into their working styles. During this, we have journeyed through multiple countries in Europe and Asia. And while we were doing this, we were fortunate enough to visit many international practices and got a window to interact with such architects and practitioners to experience how cutting edge practices, research, and technology all come together. The next is reading series. It's an ongoing series that we conduct within our studio premise. We get together almost every 8 weeks, and architects actually discuss non-architectural themes. So we started with a very interesting topic, cinema. Then we moved on to expression, art, meaning. Bijoy Ramachandran presented his understanding of reading meaning itself. And so far, we have completed 5 such events, but we hope to resume soon as possible, I guess. The next is Pulp. Pulp is an online magazine which presents everyday stories for everyone. And I will be talking about it more in the later half of the presentation. Next is 13. 13 is something new, and we are still in the process of developing and evolving it. And we saw it emerge as a need during the first lockdown in March. So this too I shall elaborate later. Now, this presentation is divided into 2 parts. One is, the first is reading grounds. For the first part, I have picked 2 projects to showcase as a process of design what we are talking about here. And the reason of picking specifically these 2 projects is because they are of a same scale, similar typology, and they basically have identical set of requirements. Geographically, they are in very close vicinity, almost 5 kilometers away from each other. And both the projects are currently at the same stage where the construction is just about to start on site. One more thing, we consciously chose projects which are at the design stage because I feel that they would bring out the design ideology in its purest sense. So first project is a 2.5 acre site villa development. Luckily, we were involved at the beginning of the planning process where the footprint of the blocks were fixed by then, but the landscape areas were in between the row of houses and the peripheral space, which was at that time meant for demarcated as a vehicular movement. So working closely with the architects, we started to relook at the whole idea of landscape spaces, and we coined the idea of what if the basement under those green fringes between the houses did not have the basement slab, but the earth itself. And when we started relooking at the entire footprint of the basement, the basement sort of started to recede back, and it became more like a fringed comb sort of a pattern, where all the vehicular movement was kept only till the basement level, and the ground floor became completely pedestrian friendly and vehicle free. So conventionally, when we look at these kind of setups, the center portion is kept as a movement zone or a connector, and each villa is given their own private set of green spaces as a small pocket. But what we proposed instead was that what if we bring all the green areas in the center as a community space, accessible through pedestrian and bicycles, and the connectors come closer to the villas with a very small fringe of green still intact in front of each house. So this became actually the core of our design backbone. And the idea is to then create green fringes between each row of houses. This strategy increases the overall green cover, as well as it creates a continuous landscape that helps us bring the community living. So the green fringe in the center, therefore, will become a common ground, encouraging all the families to come together as a single pocket. And since this pocket was on the natural ground, it can actually accommodate large trees and a diverse range of species, and that can resonate more of a tropical landscape setting. Once that core of the narrative was set, we started to look at other open space available and started to punctuate them with active key nodes. So the first one itself becomes the green street, and then we started to look at more shaded areas under the trees, which can become activity zones, or community green spaces where productive landscape can grow, or extension of the clubhouse area itself, more open, more extended outdoor setting, and which can have a multifunctional usage. Even though, as we would see in the master plan, these active nodes are fixed in the master plan, but the activities within these spaces would cater to pretty much an open-ended spectrum without the limitation of time period or the age group. So all these ideas started to club together and shaped the master plan what we have here. In front of each house, there's largely a densely planted area, and effect remains the same from the upper floors as well. So that not only gives the soothing kind of a green view, but also to an extent maintains the privacy of each house. The peripheral area remains largely hardscape and accommodates a lot of activities which will allow this community to function in a certain way how we are imagining. So once these criteria were fixed, we started dotting the master plan with larger trees. So each street started with a marker tree and ended with the same. And these trees did, they created sort of pause points within landscape, and we made sure that each planting of these trees happened on the natural ground so that they can grow to its full extent rather than a podium slab. Just looking a little more into a detail of this green street here, the purpose was to create this kind of a dense planting which had a multifold of purposes, but it shouldn't become more like a divide, rather a network to bring people together. So we started to connect both the side of the green buffer, but the issue was that the moment we put a hardscape in the center, it was dividing the fringe into multiple smaller parts, and that really was not ideal for us. So during that process of resolution, we thought that why not we can make the connector itself as more transparent, and the green can actually filter through underneath this connector as a bridge and still remain continuous as a network. This is a small illustration that we did just to enhance the same idea, where we can look how closely the green can come to the building, how the bridge can accommodate seating spaces, and even though you are in the middle of a street you're yet surrounded with this dense layer of multiple greens of large trees and smaller shrubs. And while crossing the bridge itself, that sense of green connection doesn't get dissolved. Now, that became the core of the story, I suppose. And all the remaining landscape areas started to function in conjunction to the same idea and started feeding into it. So just building up the same story. So be it the entrance plaza or multifunctional space under the canopy of the trees, or a small water body deck area where people can gather in the evening, even these hidden pergola spaces which will allow people to get away and find their own spaces within the community, or the productive garden areas where the community itself sort of grows things and it feedbacks into them. Looking at the softscape palette, it was also a derivation of the design. The tropical greenery as the primary essence. So throughout the year, there is this lush greenery that can be seen. Yet the yellow became more of a temporal highlight for this project. And also it sort of complemented the hardscape material palette that was evolved. So even though there was a limited landscape area around in this site, we were able to figure out 16% of the total landscape area as a productive garden. So everything that can be grown here through the community feedbacks into it, and it just builds the idea of community as a strong narrative. Now, even though it might not be sufficient to make the community self-sustaining, because it won't be able to accommodate the staples that we use in the kitchen every day, but these pockets will ensure that seasonal vegetables, herbs, and aromatics can be grown throughout the year, and in a way create the sense of engagement or a ownership for these parcels. And as the community grows, they grow and evolve as what the need is. That sort of concludes the first project. For the project 2, this site was this site is little under 4 acres as a land parcel, and this is a low-rise apartment with again building blocks in a very linear fashion, balconies overlooking these alleys of landscape in the center, and alleys are quite elongated up to 120 meters approximately at a stretch. The site was part of an existing green pocket within an urban setup, which was quite dense and very close to a lake. So existing flora, although it had a limited species, but the site was mostly clear, although there's this hint of peripheral vegetation that sort of starts to creep into within the site. And that suggested that at some point, this site itself must have been part of this forest. And the close vicinity to the water body attracted a lot of fauna as well. So we did a quick study to understand the pattern of their movement, to get a better understanding of the context. And actually that became our first clue into this design process. The second was the design strategy itself. So even though these are low-rise apartments, and there was this 4 vertical connections in each block. So those became the primary zone for the landscape, and the linear, these became the primary landscape courts, and these linear connections were the overlay. And that really became the second clue for us. Third, since the building was pretty uniform, and even when you cut a section at any given point, that was also almost identical at any junction. So it started to evolve a certain size of a landscape court. That gave us the third and the final clue. And the requirements were pretty typical for this kind of a residential typology. So we started to play with these and explore these set of 12 modules with a kind of an outdoor essence. The activities were not 100% defined at this point of time, but each space had its own certain idea of a program or an essence. So next step was to create multiple iterations to look at various spaces that can alternate each other. For example, the more white space that you see is more green and the browns become more hardscapes. So this, for example, this certain space becomes typically like a congregation space, a kund, or these undulating spaces became sort of seating structure where kids can play and elders can sit at the same time. These unwinding paths became connector and movement connections between spaces. Then there were spaces which were like a datum was sinking down to a certain degree or rising up to a certain degree as well. So once the modules were fixed in a certain sequence, they were placed between the blocks. And this, what you see on the screen is a very abstract diagram of where we just highlight the key elements, which will eventually become the anchor points within the landscape and the overall design. The purpose of each element vary at every junction. So they change character from being a feature wall to become a seater, or even a sculptural marker, water feature, playscape, or even niche spaces within open areas. What really ties them together is the physical identity, the color, the texture, and a certain sense of a visual connection. That is how the master plan emerged. But that really is not all. So there are actually three systems, specific systems that are working together and are simultaneously feeding into a single narrative. The initial clues that I mentioned were really important into the storytelling. So if I break it down as three different systems, the first system is of points, which holds the tree plantation itself. So if we have to bring back this land parcel to the existing context of the forest which surrounds the site, there really needs to be a character of forest created within the site as well. So even though there was a limited space between the buildings, we started to work at iterations looking at how to maximize the number of trees that can be planted in these alleys. And we looking at the fauna, which was silver oak and teak trees, we worked out that maybe there is a diagonal grid where there's a clear distance of 4 meters between each tree, and we can get the maximum number of trees which can be planted at this site. So the benefit was, and the beauty of the existing trees was that they were really slender and they left a lot of underspace under the canopy for various functions to happen. And that created the first system for us. The second was the landscape lines. And these lines were extruded as elements, and they were kept consciously very close to the ground line. So they were not extruded to beyond a certain height. So as to the main intention was for them to not compete with the trees itself. So if somebody was to lie on one of the benches and look up towards the sky or gaze through the sun, through the foliage, all they will see is the clear foliage and this sort of filtered sunlight that falls on the ground. The third is the ground plane itself, which makes the surfaces, and the surface itself started to modulate, so becoming water bodies or extruding itself to become mounds or something. So what it was doing is basically, since there was no vehicular movement, this ground modulation started to take shape and created certain different kind of volume rather than giving again that same kind of section throughout within landscape. So if when we put all these sections together or layers together, individually when we look at them, they are very they have their own logic and independence, but when they are put together, they start to derive a landscape of programmatic correlation over time. Within the tree grid, if you look at it closely, we started to break the grid at places and started to interject them with larger trees. which will become pause points within landscape, and they will create kind of this temporal attraction because of the change of blooming patterns or within this annual cycle. The sections, if you observe, the top of the tree line and the building line is sort of quite static, but the ground plane now starts to jagger. And spaces, when observed from the eye level as well as from the upper floors of the balcony, they start to create this kind of a play in volume and light, and starts to create an essence of changing sections throughout as one moves from one point to the other. Also, when landscape viewed from one alley to the other, there was a certain connection between the adjacent activities that were placed together. So if here the ground plane was sort of sinking down, here the ground plane was raising up. So creating sort of an inverse effect here. Same thing at various sections we started to work. For example, if there was a kids play area allotted on one side, it started to mirror on the other side of the podium as well, connecting one continuous space through the podium space. Now, once we were able to generate a visual impact of the forest-like planting, there were other sensory experience to look at to enhance that experience. For example, the smell of the forest was created through the different kind of flora that can be planted and support the trees within the softscape. The taste itself by planting edible plant material that could bring that whole pluck and eat kind of an experience. The materials itself started to resonate with the tactile quality of the forest floor, where you walk and there is this crunching sound. And even the sound by attracting the fauna that was already visiting the nearby lake, and that could come to the site by using the correct planting strategy. So this kind of an illustration, if you see, narrates the entire essence of the forest creation through the project. And even though there are various programs happening throughout the site, there is this unifying connection and a seamless network of spaces that binds the entire landscape together. Now, if we just take a moment and reflect back on both the projects, there is an extreme similarity in terms of what the project demanded and what was expected out of landscape. But yet, the essence of landscape changes completely because of the stance of narration that we chose. And for us, that's where the process becomes key. And when I say the word process, it's important that to understand that it's not an stylistic system or an equation, but intuitive understanding of context-driven ideas that look, observe, understand, and create something with an intention. Now, for the last part of this reading round section, what I've done is I've put together a series of photographs of our completed works. So I think there is a long way between design and completing a project. So things alter, ideas sometimes get diluted, but the purpose is to look back at our own designs and find a frame that can connect you back to the initial story or narration, or rather, if that's not possible, then find a frame that can narrate a new story altogether. This first photograph, what is not seen in this picture is there is a connecting bridge on the first floor, which allows the user to see from this window that frames the water body completely, and it makes it appear like a live painting. This is at the edge of a farmhouse on Kaveri River bank, and the platform was tilted consciously towards true east, and that allowed to maximize the impact of sunrise when experienced. Otherwise, it was just a quiet place to relax away from the city. So the whole idea of creating landscape spaces which can surprise you at times is important. Uh, this was part of a swimming pool for a resort that we had done, and the water seamlessly merges with the river, which is really far behind. Uh, this was part of a temporary structure, and the water body is a shallow water body with this kind of shale chips that create the base, and the client can reuse this material once the building is demolished and something else has to come up. This water body is part of a residence extension, and we thought of using these roof tiles as the floor of the water body, where so client was not very particular about creating very pristine looking water body. He wanted a more natural system. So we used a more natural material, and the gaps between this wave kind of a pattern will allow to moss to grow, or these niches will give hiding places for small fishes and tadpole, and we really hope that it ages really well over time. This is a very simple and a clean planting strategy for a commercial building facade. Now, this is a very simple picture if you think about in terms of landscape, but what really catches my eye is how the grooves in the paving pattern sort of resonates with those thin blades of the grass which is planted next to it. And similar to the last picture in this photograph as well, the red of the brick wall starts to seep into the red pennisetum grass which is planted next to it before it's turned green. This is part of a resort restaurant where the restaurant only had very limited area of planting, and literally there were 4 pockets of 2 feet by 2 feet where we planted these kind of creepers and in the Western Ghats. And eventually, over a very short period of time, the entire structure was just covered with this kind of a greenery overhanging the outdoor landscape spaces as well. The same project where the inside and the outside is completely green. This is an old picture, so currently even this vertical facade is completely green. This cobbled pathway in a very pixelated form is placed to a very shallow water body in a very hot and dry area. The sun, when it hits the water body, it starts to shimmer, and so does the paving, I believe. Here, the sky is sort of framed between the ribs of architecture and these ribs of the palm planted next to it. This door actually opens up into a triple height space which is skylit, and it faces east and into a puja room. So the moment one enters into the space, one bathes into the sunlight itself. This picture is from very first project of ours. We did in Gurgaon for Karma Animal Foundation. It's a facility to house around 120 stray dogs. This is a central courtyard between the 2 wings of these shelters, where this kind of a meandering pattern holds cedars, trees, and a water channel, sort of like a meet and greet for these animals who stay here. Apart from this, as a part of our working methodology, we really love to create such illustrations and graphics to understand a space. So something that we do purely out of passion, and I think they are very quirky means of representing and expressing idea of landscape. So now when I talk about quirky graphics, this really leads me into the second part of the presentation, which is ground research. Here I'll be talking about This sort of inbuilt need within us to illustrate and tell stories come very handy when we started Pulp. We are part of an online magazine, as many of you might have read or come across or heard about. It's called Pulp. If not, then I think it's a good time to do it now. This is a place where we narrate stories about every day, everywhere, and everyone. The core of the content is sort of intended to evocate, inquire, engage, and create a language that reimagines the current trends of urbanization. The word pulp implies both to flesh and fiction, and that has shaped a very versatile storytelling medium for us. Back in 2017, six of us came together with a very different notion on and ideas of what this magazine would be like. And I must tell you that even today, we all have very contradicting ideas at times, and it takes discussions over discussions to come up with content. But the unifying factor that underlines all of us is that pulp must inquire and question at all times. The stories are about seeing the unseen from the daily pattern of individual lifestyle. And what we do, the crew fondly likes to call it pulping. Pulp immensely draws from the art of cinema. It constructs narrative based on screenplays and visual references. And for example, like Adventures of Vai, where Satyajit Ray's classic Pathar Panchali, a child protagonist, is positioned as a counterpoint to the society. Series Residential Evil starts to look at and questions or positions as a counterpoint to the human relationship at societal and community and neighborhood level. Let's take Katha as an instance, which is a folklore stylized narration of contemporary society tales. And these are expressed through interpretations of traditional art form. The stories under this series exhibit multiple encounters that as a community we confront on our day-to-day living. Let's take the last story under this series as an example called Bachpan Se Pachpan Tak. So in this particular story, we talk about how age is not just a mere representation of a number, but it is a societal benchmark that dictates or evaluates and creates an association with an individual's decision, behavior, and life choices. Any individual at a certain age is expected to perform in a specific manner by the society to be accepted. And story brings out the irony of that fact. So story begins where a man who is a monkey charmer as a professional goes from village to village performing these theater to entertain the crowd, and his creatures become the act itself. But this particular time, he says that I don't have a script or a performance today, and whatever audience demands, these two intelligent creatures will do. The crowd seemed mighty pleased at this point of time because they were not mere spectators or witnesses, but they were able to participate and actually dictate the acts. And when the performance starts, the male and female monkeys dress up as little kids and they come up on stage to receive their commands. And the crowd seemed a little wary or clueless at this point. And after a moment's pause, they say, they're sitting so happily, so let them be. For the next act, the creatures dressed up appropriately as teens of their gender would do. And the audience jumped with excitement to see that female monkey so obediently sitting in one corner. And that was just a wonderful sight for them to see a dutiful teen girl. The male monkey was seen hanging upside down, and the crowd seemed to argue that he was just a child and he needed to do his own things. So why can't we just let him grow up? For the third act, the female came out draped in a single piece of clothing and the male with two individual set of garments. This time the crowd spoke unanimously in the same breath. He would work and earn, and she would bear a child. The both creatures walked away in the opposite direction to just perform their acts. The last part of the act that night, announcer performed. Monkeys dressed up, looking very similar to each other, sat in the chair and did nothing. A young boy from the audience stood up and announced that this was no way of living and they should just die. The youth cracked up and choired in chanting the same. The creatures pretended to fell off from their chair. Looking at this, the crowd broke out the applause for such a hearty performance and complimented the performer. When breaking out into a smaller group based on their age groups and discussing the act. Few of the people went up to the performer to wish him, asking him when he would be returning to perform another act, and casually inquiring, "You must be 30, not married yet?" The performer simply smiled and walked away. Another story is from another series called Shrot, which means resource. And this was a fantastic idea that looked at our forest through, and which was brought by Bahar, one of our collaborators. We worked with her to investigate, look closely, and reveal variations within this large gamut as to what we know as forest. Our association with them, which is not really defined by the surface that they cover, but a degree of sort of human intervention or allowance and the resistance that they give. The name cleverly was decided by the literal translation of forest, which is one, and the fact that we were looking at 10 different types of forests, and hence Ravan. Pal worked very closely with Bahar on the narration, and then crew sort of supported the story with understanding the style of the narration and what kind of graphics are required. And they created 10 such graphics for 10 typologies of forests that we know. We also like to thank Geeta and Bridge for giving us a coverage in their magazine Landscape Journal in their issue number 58. And I think it was wonderful to look at our own work in a print medium as well. It was quite exciting for us. Next, last but not the least, is 13. Basically, it's a community for self-discovery through writing. Like we clean our physical self every morning, emptying our mind of biases and our opinions is also equally important. Today, more than ever, when we are consuming information at such an enormous rate and doing multiple things at the same time, in such times, bringing our inner clarity for better expression is of utmost importance. And that's why we created 13 for this cause. Writing each morning and emptying our thoughts on paper has helped us to articulate ourselves better. And we wanted to create a platform to share this idea of mindful living and building a community. So do check out creating13.com. It's creating13.com. More details are on the next slide. And I also personally invite you all to join us within this cause of writing each morning as a process of catharsis. It also helps us tremendously, and I hope it will do the same for you as well. 13 is about being and creating. So if any of you are storytellers or have ideas or love to make graphics as much as we do visit pulplife.in and write to us for collaborations. We really believe that all ideas are wonderful ideas and can be converted into great stories. Also, under 13, we are launching our own podcast soon and set of workshops for daily catharsis for writing. So if you are interested, do visit and subscribe to 13 on 13, creating13.com for some mindful reading every day. Thank you.
So thank you, Pratanshi. I congratulate you and your team for your in-depth research, which you do for all your projects and all these spaces which you design, and try to achieve your basic intent of reading ground.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Himanshu.
yeah, so I believe all the viewers might have enjoyed, and they will appreciate the way you design, the way you narrate, and the way you document your things. The documentation is very, it's marvelous. And of course, the other ventures of Atelier, Pulp, and 13, which surely keep your practice alive and others' practice alive. So, thank you, Pratanshi. So
Thank
we
you,
will
Himanshu.
now move for question and answer session.
Sure.
I would request everyone to type in your questions. Pratanshi, so we enjoyed your documentation.
Mhm.
So I have a direct question about your documentation and the process, how you lead to your clients. We saw many abstracts, 2D drawings, and of things, which are wonderfully documented. So
Himanshu, your voice is breaking. I can't hear you.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, much better. Should I switch off my video as well?
Yeah. No. I haven't.
Yeah.
So seeing all these documentation. So how do you go into your process, and how when you first meet your client and how the project goes ahead? What is the process? Do you first present them the abstract, and then
Honestly, as I
what
earlier
is the
mentioned,
process of your dealing?
there is no set process as such. We take one project at a time, and for each, the joyful part for us is that each project comes as a new opportunity. So we do know that how we have to proceed in a very technical sense, but we don't go for any project with any sense of bias or previous understanding, and that allows us this sort of a innocent space to relook at our own understanding, question ourselves, and treat each project as the first project we are doing.
Any interesting experience which you had at your side with the client, with the team, with the executing team, with the consultants?
So, like I think after looking at the presentation, you would have understood that we are very fond of creating graphics and representing our work in a unique or finding new ways to represent our work. But sometimes it also has a certain fallback because it becomes so abstract that conveying our ideas to the client, we have to go back to the nascent stage of creating very basic drawings to express. So sometimes we have to create two set of drawings. One we create only for ourselves, and one which are more generic and we create for more, presenting to the client to convey properly all the ideas. So yeah, that happens sometimes, but I don't think so that really stops us from exploring. Yeah. Your mic is off.
So we have next question from Harish. So he's asking like we have 7-meter fire tender path for which is under the guidelines. So does both of your first project cater the fire tender path?
The first project is the okay. So the fire tender path is now in the basement level itself, what they have created, and there is a certain sorry, Shantish, you're saying something? Okay, so yeah, on the periphery there is a certain amount of hardscape. So the planting is done in such a manner that wherever fire tender needs to be, wherever it needs to reach, it can.
Okay.
So there is, I mean, it's not one surface, unified surface, but it's divided between the basement and the top slab.
Okay. Thank you, Prakanshi. So, Swati Sesrubude is asking, so who are all your inspirations? Like, which are your inspirations?
Oh, there's so many. I think both of us are very fond of works of Charles Correa and Jeffrey Bawa. And we also, OAB has been a big inspiration for us to look at research and our work simultaneously. So we always sort of lean back and look at them. And then works by Shumi, or how they, the whole idea of how they narrate or present their works is kind of a key for us to understand what we can do and what more we can do.
Okay. There is a congratulation from Bobby sir, and he says that it's a brilliant work and phenomenal presentation.
Thank you, Bobby.
So he's asking, yeah. So he's asking, in the project where you have rearranged the green to central green by taking it away from individual green, how does it work in terms of land allocation to the end user?
So initially also when the client came to us, they had not really allocated green spaces individually along with the villa. So there is an internal courtyard within each house, which is part of the green space for each client when they purchase the house. The outer was meant for a communal green, although they had not really looked at making it a central green, and so they were thinking of making individual gardens that eventually will be maintained by the society itself. They won't be private gardens. So the moment we pitched in this idea of bringing them all together, they were pretty much instantly on board, because then that will also mean that maintaining it will become easier for the clients or the society, because it is one unified space rather than tending to 50 different gardens at the same time.
Okay. So there are a lot of congratulations, and so we have a small announcement. So for the next presentation in the session 17, architect Kavita Kedawat from Jaipur, she would be presenting her topic, integration of disintegrates, and 7 p.m. So hope to see you all again, and thank you, Pritanshi,
Thank you so much.
the wonderful presentation, and thank you all for coming. Thank you, Mahendra.
Thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Himanshu,
everyone.
again, thank you so much for this platform.